And tonight, the diary of our fallen ambassador, Christopher Stevens, has been uncovered, and it is raising very serious questions about what the Obama administration knew about the volatile security situation that was going on in Benghazi. Now, the ambassador's writings were uncovered by CNN inside the U.S. consulate 4 days after he and 3 other Americans were killed in an orchestrated attack. Now, CNN reports that the journal specifically mentions, quote, the rise in Islamic extremism and al-Qaeda's growing presence in Libya. Now, it also reveals that Stevens believed that he was on an al-Qaeda hit list. Now, tragically, we now know that, in fact, he was on that hit list. But tonight, what we don't know is who else the ambassador told about his concerns and why nothing was done to ensure his protection. Because one thing is certain, if an American ambassador took the time to sit down and put into writing that he is in fear of his life, well, then he more than likely expressed those very same concerns to his superiors and colleagues, both at the State Department and throughout the administration. So where are those letters? Where are those cables? Where are those emails? In other words, what is the administration trying to hide? Now, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was asked about this report as it began to develop late last week. Let's take a look at this.
There is at least one report suggesting that Ambassador Stevens felt that he was on a, quote, al-Qaeda hit list. Is this a scurrilous rumor? Is this gallows humor when one is working in a period of difficulty and great challenge? Or is there something more to what he allegedly, and I stress that word, said?
As to your final question, I have absolutely no information or reason to believe that there's any basis for that.
Now, there you have Secretary Clinton on record claiming that she had no knowledge of Ambassador Stevens' security concerns, but also keep in mind that she wanted you to believe that this assassination was not premeditated and was the result of a spontaneous mob protesting a YouTube video, which, by the way, was released in July. But forgive me, in light of the administration's handling of the situation, I am not ready to take Secretary Clinton at her word, and if proof, in fact, does exist that the ambassador's warning to Washington were ignored leading up to this attack, well, his family deserves to know the truth. And not only that, they deserve better from the president himself. Now, because last night the commander-in-chief had the nerve to liken this terrorist attack and the vicious murder of 4 Americans, what he calls it, just a bump in the road. Watch this.
Have recent events in the Middle East given you any pause about your support for the governments that have come to power following the Arab Spring?
Well, I said even at the time that this is going to be a rocky path. I was pretty certain and continue to be pretty certain that there are going to be bumps in the road.
Now, a U.S. ambassador, 2 Navy SEALs, and another American are assassinated. He calls it a bump in the road. Now, the worst part about that insensitive comment is that it was made the day after the terrorist attack on September the 12th. Now, we're going to have much more on that outrageous interview tonight with Dick Morris. But first, always an honor and pleasure. We're joined in studio an author of a brand new book out today. It's called Mugged, Racial Demagoguery from the 70s to Obama, available in bookstores everywhere. And Coulter's with us. They lied. This is a bottom line here. They said in a YouTube video of you, there were 2 waves of attack. This is not spontaneous. Oh, I just happen to have a missile-fired grenade that I'm about to shoot into a consulate and kill an ambassador. And
wait, you think it wasn't the YouTube video? Is that what you're telling me here,
the one
Sean
released
Hannity?
In July?
Which, so ironic what Obama said on 60 Minutes, because I consider his whole administration a bump in the road. His presidency, a bump in the road.
No, that's a good point. This thing is, look, we got 2 Navy SEAls. We got an ambassador. The ambassador saying, I'm afraid I'm on a terror hit list. He writes it in his diary. Right. So are we to believe that he wrote it in his diary, but he didn't tell anybody in a cable or an email? Right. And how about we get to the bottom of this so we can tell their families the truth that they screwed up?
Right. Well, as I told you 2 weeks ago, I was a little suspicious since it all started on 9/11, something the White House didn't seem to notice. And all of that, I mean, that goes back to my last book, not the one out tomorrow. About mobs. And of course, I mean, you know, we could all see this Arab Spring was going to be a disaster. Mob movements have never led to anything good. And also, I mean, this diary and everything else, the initial reaction when Romney said what was absolutely true, that the administration was sympathizing with the people who were out there murdering our ambassador by blaming it on this YouTube video about Muhammad, was that Romney had his facts wrong, and that sympathetic statement went out from the Cairo embassy before the violence started. Well, then what were they responding to? They must have been responding to something. Yeah. And if they had the information that they were responding to of this little trailer on YouTube, why weren't the embassies fortified?
By the way, and Jay Carney, this isn't about America, but their American embassies breached, American flags ripped down and burned, Al-Qaeda flags raised, and chanting death to America. It kind of is a good indication that it might be about America, and that the president apologizing for, quote, torture, and he's going to close Gitmo, didn't exactly pan out. I have one last question on this, and that is the president's entire handling of the rise of radical Islamists.
It's a big problem.
He pushed out Mubarak. We got the Muslim Brotherhood. We got President Morsi, who, by the way, is a 9/11 truther, called the Jews vampires, associates with Hamas and all these other terror groups.
No, you've been right about the Muslim Brotherhood all this time, and the president has been wrong.
Watch this ad, and I want to get your reaction to it.
Here's a Muslim Brotherhood rally for their new Egyptian president, Mohamed Morsi. They want to conquer Israel and renew long-severed ties with Iran, a country building nuclear weapons to slaughter the Israeli people. Death to Israel. The Muslim Brotherhood's top leaders even write about taking over America. President Obama, you invited the Muslim Brotherhood to the White House, legitimizing a group that wants to undermine America and destroy Israel? You sent them $1.5 billion of our taxpayer dollars? Why, Mr. President? Why?
It's actually $2 billion. He just canceled quietly the meeting with Morsi because I guess he had more time for the Letterman, for The View, for Beyonce, for Jay-Z, for fundraising, for campaigning. And he's not meeting with a single world leader while he is in the UN tomorrow.
Yeah, well, his foreign policy is a mess. You have the Arab world exploding, and it wouldn't be exploding in Libya if, though he is a monster, the old Libyan strongman Gaddafi was friendly to the U.S., had already given up his weapons of mass destruction, had even paid off the families from the Lockerbie bombing, which he finally admitted responsibility for after Bush invaded Iraq. We got a lot out of the Iraq war, but they're not talking about this on the other stations because they can't talk about Obama's foreign policy or domestic policy. All they can do is accuse Republicans of racism.
All right.